Bonjour, good afternoon. Bienvenue à notre conversation sur la réconciliation. Compte tenu de notre audience diversifiée, nous vous servirons de la langue de Shakespeare pour notre rencontre. Nous nous servirons de notre rencontre. Hi, I'm Jerry Labossière, co-chair of our organizing committee with Monseigneur Lagat, and I'd like to welcome all of you on Facebook and YouTube to La Cathédrale Saint-Boniface in our conversation on reconciliation this afternoon. As you may recall, a vision was established for Saint-Boniface Cathedral by our collective community as a cathedral open to the world. To this end, Archbishop Lagat initiated a series of discussions on reconciliation with the diocese and the broader community, with the 2018 and 19 events focused on truth and reconciliation dialogue, education workshops, and a community feast. Evolving from the discussions of the two previous years, our events in 2020 and 2021 will invite us to shift our reflection to a broader view of reconciliation, the seeds of which lie within us, where true reconciliation with others starts with being at peace with ourselves. As an opening prayer, I would like to quote a meditation from Embers by Richard Wagamese, page 21, if those of you who know Embers, my favorite number. Richard was an Ojibwe who passed a number of years ago. He was born in Northwest Ontario, spent a lot of time in British Columbia. So he's a writer of many books. I want to listen deeply enough that I hear everything and nothing at the same time. And I am made more by the enduring quality of my silence. I want to question deeply enough that I'm made more not by the answers so much as by my desire to continue asking questions. I want to speak deeply enough that I am made more by the articulation of my truth shifting into my day's shape. In this way, listening, pondering, and sharing become my connection to the oneness of life, and there is no longer any part of me in exile. My spiritual father once told me, nothing in the universe ever grew from the outside in. I like that. It keeps me grounded. It reminds me to be less concerned with outside answers and more focused on the questions inside. It's the quest for those questions that will lead me to the highest possible version of myself. End of prayer. So I'll now invite Most Reverend Albert Lagat, Archbishop of Saint-Boniface, to bring greetings.
Bonjour à vous tous. Good evening to all of you. Let us begin by acknowledging that today we are indeed situated on Treaty 1 territory, the original lands of the Anishinaabe, and crossroads of the Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories, and we seek to redress the harms and mistakes of the past together. Recognizing that we are all treaty people, let our presence and our actions here today on this sacred land in some way contribute to a more loving and compassionate world where we all dedicate ourselves to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. The Catholic response to the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and especially those sections devoted or designated to the churches, our Catholic response as a church in Canada includes an appeal to all the Catholics, laity, members of institutes of consecrated life and of societies of apostolic life, deacons, priests, and bishops, to make 8 commitments and to carry them out in practice in order to continue to walk together with all Indigenous people in building a more just society where their gifts and the gifts of all people are nurtured and honored. I personally, and I certainly wish to lead the Archdiocese in this direction, am committed to continue the journey forward proposed by these recommendations. We, as non-Indigenous and Indigenous people, must collaborate in the process of reconciliation through education and greater understanding of residential schools, of the impact it had on the Indigenous and those who were involved in this school system, and of the generations flowing forward, the intergenerational effect. We must also collaborate to discern the way forward so that each of us does not remain victim or prisoner of the past, but that we are freed to build together a harmonious society where there is indeed opportunity for all. And so the principle of true dialogue, Jerry was reflecting on listening, pondering, listening, sharing. So yes, true dialogue and eventually and evermore true friendship must prevail. It is upon mutual respect, understanding, and a common effort that this way forward will be built. And so what we hear today, our conversations of today, may they help us learn and understand the ever deeper meaning of reconciliation and provide us all with insights on how each of us can start or continue on this collaborative journey. And so, miigwech.
In our first conversation this afternoon, Lisa Raven, Executive Director of Returning to Spirit, will share her insights on how reconciliation is a process, uniquely transforming one's inner being as it is done to the person who will be reconciling with. We will be reconciling with. Lisa will also explain how the Seeds of Reconciliation workshops function, which we will be offering, by the way, through Returning to Spirit in the spring of 2021, and why these workshops are so transformative. Lisa, by way of background, is from the Hollow Water First Nation in Manitoba, an Ojibwe community known for innovation in the field of restorative justice. Lisa's personal life and relationships were so impacted by her experience of profound forgiveness and connection that she has been leading and developing workshops for Returning to Spirit since 2006. Almost 15 years later, Lisa continues to be deeply honored and inspired by the courage and grace of people willing to move forward from what has been keeping them stuck in their lives. Her work goes beyond healing. It provides conditions for transformation and mindfulness in all relationships. Her concern with ecology, healing, and empowering communities is connected to a deep spiritual belief and identity to traditional practices in today's context. So we have gifts for all of you, which we will be distributing afterwards. So Lisa, over to you.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon for this conversation. I'm Lisa Raven, and I'm from Hollow Water First Nation. Currently, I'm the Executive Director of Returning to Spirit, but I've been a trainer since 2007. And so I've led and facilitated many reconciliation workshops all across the country. I'm not only the executive director, but I'm also a student of the work of reconciliation. Because for me, my life has been deeply impacted by the principles that are held in the work of Returning to Spirit. And so, I want to keep opening that up for myself, and I want to create, a life for myself that is, while it can't be free of suffering, because I think I think that's impossible. I'd like to create a shorter suffering, if I'm going to have, any at all, as opposed to long drawn out stuff. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Returning to Spirit, we're a national nonprofit charitable organization that was established in 2001. And we've led our reconciliation workshops in 6 of the 10 provinces and in 1 of the 3 territories. Our work was originally created to reconcile the residential school legacy between, First Nations survivors and the church. But since then, it's evolved, as everything does in life. What we started to notice in our rooms was that the participant dynamic was starting to shift. So the survivors themselves, were starting to age. And the people that were directly involved with the residential schools were aging as well. And what we started to see was more of the intergenerational participants starting to show up. And while they weren't directly affected by the effects of residential school, they still were affected. And so now we're looking into, the 3rd and the 4th generation of lay people, of people in the non-Indigenous community, but also, within the First Nations community. And the country has started to change as well. And so now we're seeing, a lot of people from, different countries that are starting to show up and show up into our rooms and want to be a part, of this conversation of reconciliation. And the way that our workshops have been historically put on, they're long. They're 4.5 days for the foundational, and the reconciliation is another 4.5 days. And that's a huge time commitment, for people to step into and to make without fully knowing, what does reconciliation have to do with me? And not being able to make that connection really clearly. How is this, 4.5 days going to benefit me? What does it have to do with me? And so we came together and we created a 1-day workshop that's called Seeds of Reconciliation. And what it does is it brings forward some of the key components and concepts from our foundational workshop and our reconciliation workshop. So it's really an introduction for people, to get a sense or to connect with, how can this make a difference in my life? What does this have to do with me? Because I think, the word reconciliation, especially, here in Canada, after we've been, really focused on moving towards it now for the past decade. People still, I think, connect it, with, First Nations and non-First Nations people, or Indigenous and non-Indigenous, or still about residential school. And the last school closed in 1996, so that direct connection is not there for people. And the Seeds of Reconciliation was created so that, people can see that the word reconciliation and the journey itself
affects us all individually. Because at Returning to Spirit, we've always said, and we've always known that, reconciliation, has to start with ourselves. So we have to, be able to reconcile our past, our bias, our judgments before we can ever even try, to reconcile with other people. And so Seeds is a way for people to connect to that and to see, what this has to do in their lives. So I'm going to be sharing with you a couple of components today. So the first one is finish versus complete, and then we're going to spend some time on these models up here. But first, finish versus complete is from our foundational workshop. So it's from the first 4 days. And I bring it forward today because it is the foundation from which all of our work unfolds. And it's important for, people to connect with the concept that, even though things are seemingly finished, they're done, they're over, they may not yet be complete. So if I was to bring it forward in terms of events, especially with life events, there is a real distinction between something that is finished and something that is complete. And if I was to use residential school as an example to make this point, I might bring it across this way. So the last residential school in Canada closed down in 1996. Since that time, there have been compensation for the students, for the survivors. There's even been apologies. A lot of time has passed, because if you look at the way in which residential schools were officially run, taking kids out of the community, all going to a building, that part of it it's finished. It's done. It's over. Meaning it's not happening in the same way that it was back then. But just because it's finished, does that mean that it's complete? And a lot of people would say no, it's not complete. And the reason is that there's still emotions there. There may be still hurt. There may be, resentment. There even may be blame for some people. And so the emotional attachment to that event makes it incomplete. And that's a huge example to use. But if you bring it down even into our life, that statement rings true. So an example, just a general example, would be if I was going to paint a room in my house. 4 walls, I pick out my favorite paint, and I bring all of the furniture into the middle, put a drop cloth over it, and I go about, painting each wall. I do the first coat, and then I do the second coat. I'm all out of paint, I let it dry, and then I put all of the furniture back. And as I'm standing and I'm admiring, my great job that I've done in my room with my favorite color, I notice off in the corner over there, there's a spot that I missed. Every other square inch of my room is covered in, and then there's that one little spot that is glaring. So the paint job, it's finished, it's done, it's over. But is it complete? Because every time that I walk into the room, where do you think I'm focused on? Is it, the 99.9% of my, fabulous new color? or is it on that little spot? And for most of us, it's on that little spot. And so even something as like painting a wall, right, is incomplete. And then I start to have an emotional attachment to it. So my friends show up, and they come in and they want to admire my beautiful new paint, and I'm like, yeah, but, and so my attention is always focused there. And so I'm not even happy with, like, even if it's 99.9%, it's that one little, 0.01% that bugs me. And so you could take this distinction from, a huge place, right to, your living room. But it also shows up in our relationships with people. So, because if we're in relationships, then we also get into disagreements with people and arguments back and forth. So imagine, I have an argument with a friend of mine, and we disagree. She likes Tim Hortons, and I think McDonald's coffee is the best. And so we go back and forth and back and forth. And then she starts calling me names, so then I defend myself, and I call her, a no good coffee picker as well. It goes back and forth, and it gets really heated. And so she storms off, and then I storm off. The argument is finished. It's done. It's over. And so it's not happening anymore. But am I complete with it? And most often we're not, especially when something gets really heated and we can feel the emotions of it. We'll start replaying it in our mind. Oh, I should have said this. Oh, I could have said that. Oh, and we're recreating like all of the emotions, of that disagreement. And so, a week passes, and I go to the bingo hall, and she's at the bingo hall, and even though that argument is finished and over, it's in the past. It happened over a week ago. And here I am now, a week later, in the present. And I remember that interaction. And so all of those feelings, that anger, all of those thoughts, come flooding back. So then I'm no longer present to the present. I'm present now to the past. And if we don't resolve it, if it doesn't get resolved in the present, it's going to continue to show up into the future. Unless I move or, stop going to the places where she goes. So if it's not resolved, then it automatically shows up in the future. And then all of the stuff from the past, I start to re-experience that. So that's, that's from, a personal kind of argument. But you could take it even out again, back to the example of residential school. So residential school happened in the past, over 100 years ago in the past. The last one in 1996. And in my opinion, the most devastating part of residential school was that kids were taken away from their families and from their communities. To me, that's kind of what disconnected, people from the spirit, of who they are. And that legacy never did fully get reconciled. So it never did get completed. So here we are in the present. And the power of incompletions is that if you don't complete them, if you don't fully resolve them, they show up again. And you don't have to look far, to see here in the present how the past is showing up. Because hundreds of kids, are still being taken away from home. Only, they're being taken away from home now into, child and family services or put into foster care. So the most devastating part of residential school has automatically then just recreated itself. And so then we're not present, to the present and its opportunities. It's like we're present to the past. And if we don't resolve it, here in the present, it's almost like we can guarantee that it's going to show up again into the future. And then the future, is going to look exactly like it did in the past. And so we bring this distinction forward because it's that important. It's that powerful for people to see. Because unless you live in a bubble, and have had no interactions, with people in the world, you do have incompletions in your life. Whether that's with your children or with your spouse or your coworkers or, back to your parents so we do have, incompletions all over. And so identifying them is one of the main components of the work of returning to spirit. Because if you could imagine that in my life, there's tons of incompletions all surrounding me, all over, just bubbling around. And the work is, it's not to completely, clear up all of your space. Because I think that's pretty impossible. As long as you're in relationships, there's always going to be stuff. As long as you're alive. But the point is to clear enough space for yourself so that you have room. Room to express yourself, room to be you, room to grow, room to risk, room to dream, without being boxed in by our incompletions. So I bring this forward because it is actually the foundation to all of our other work. It is the key. Because left to their own device, an incompletion is just an incompletion. And if that's all it was, then we'd be fine. But they grow. So I'm just going to take this off. All right. And then I want to move on to these other models. So the A and B model. So we call this the disconnection model. And what it shows is what is actually in the way between me and someone else, someone that I want to connect with, somebody that, I want to have a partnership with or a relationship with. But there are things in the way. And I think that, it doesn't matter, what relationship it is, whether it's your spouse or a coworker or a friend. It's almost like innately we have a sense that there is always something in the way, something that is prohibiting us from connecting with people at that deeper level that we desire, that we want. And so I'm going to break it down, and we'll spend the rest of our time here, because this model comes from our reconciliation workshop. And the issue always was that in order for people to see this and to fully experience it, they had to first take the foundational workshop, and then they could come to the reconciliation. And, that's 9.5 days later. And we knew this was something that, man, if people see this, if they get this, that this is something that could really alter, their relationships. But they just don't know. They don't know what it actually has to do with them. So I'm gonna explain and, how it works. So, and I'm going to use my own life as an example. So, if this is me over here, I'm A, and the X is an incompletion. So something happened. Something happened in my life that disconnected me. And I'm going to use rejection. So at one point in my life when I was a kid, I was rejected. And I'm going to use rejection because I think it's one that everybody can relate to. And so for me, I grew up here in Winnipeg. And I went to a school here in Winnipeg, and at that time, there was mostly non-Indigenous kids. And, I was one of, maybe a handful of Indigenous kids. And so the event or the incompletion for me was that, I wanted friends. And so there was always these girls in my class, and they would play, and then I'd want to go play with them. And they'd say, you can't play with us because you're not wearing blue. I'm like, okay. So then the next day I'd wear blue. And then I'd go, and they say, oh, it's yellow today, so you can't play with us today. It's like, okay. And so for me, the event, was around, not being accepted or being rejected. And as soon as an incompletion happens, feelings are attached to it. Because remember, that is what keeps it stuck. And so the feelings for me around that event were, I was disappointed, I was hurt, maybe got a little mad and sad. And so those were the feelings for me. And then feelings trigger thoughts. So if I'm feeling mad, then that triggers a thought. I don't like them. They're mean. What's wrong with me? How come they don't want to play with me? I wish I, had better clothes, or I wish my skin didn't look this color, or whatever. I wish, I was blue. And so you start to create all kinds of thoughts. And then, we internalize it. So we say, well, what's wrong with me? Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm not important. Maybe I'm not good enough. And then we also then project that to others. Well, maybe they're bad. Maybe they're mean. Maybe kids at this school are just, bad. And then, it starts to build, right? And so we make a decision. And so for me, that decision was, okay, I'm just going to be alone. I'm not going to have friends. And so we call it a story, right? And we create this story, and what it is it's our narrative. It's what we tell ourselves what happened. This is what happened. The kids at this school are mean. They don't like me. There must be something wrong with me why they don't like me, and no one's sticking up for me, right? And so that becomes then the event. And so that becomes the story. And what happens, in life is that there isn't only one event. There's tons, there's hundreds, there's millions of events that happen. But they start to align in a particular way. So that next year, we moved back to Hollow Water, back to the First Nation. And I was excited because I thought, hey, I'm going to have friends there. This is a new opportunity. And so I go to that school, and, people are, they're the same color as I am, and some of them are even my cousins. I've seen them, during summer holidays, and I show up with my books from the Winnipeg school, and at that time, I was learning French. And so I go, and I'm like, hey, and I'm, reading this book in French, and all of a sudden, these kids then, they don't want to play with me, because they're like, well, you're not like us. You're a city kid, or you're a white kid. You're different. So then they didn't want to play with me either, And so again, there's another incompletion, right? And then even deeper hurt there, even deeper anger, and it starts to, build and solidify my own narrative, my own story about myself, about others. All of these disempowering beliefs. And other things happened in my life. Let's say, tons more incompletions, that added and molded, that story. And so you fast forward now, 20 years later, and there's been hundreds. Well, it starts to, so an incompletion goes to a story, but then what it does, it links into our body. So our body starts to get wired to those hurtful events. So every time something similar happens, or something that reminds us, of an incompletion, or, a hurtful episode in the past, where it all comes flooding back. And we can feel it in our bodies, like our stomach gets tight, or that, we clench, or our voice, squeaks. And so that's what, the feeling of body wiring is like. But it starts to affect, so here, this is called already listening. So your story is really just the conversation that's happening in your head. And your already listening is that conversation that's always looking. Like we fine-tune then our radar. And our radar, is set to prove everything that we have, put together. All this disempowering belief system, all of the stuff that we're saying about ourselves, about others, that disconnects us. It's listening and looking for ways out there and behaviors and what people say and do to us to make itself, or to make us in our mind right about everything that we've compiled. And it starts to affect, so it's like we start assuming. It's like an already knowing. Oh, I already know that group over there, is going to reject me. So I'm not even going to go over and say hi and make friends. So then it affects how we're being. If we're born just naturally wanting to, connect and be with people, then because of the past, and we know we're going to get rejected because it's happened already, it affects how we're being in the world, and the risks and the friendships that we're willing to create or make. And it starts to affect what we're doing, right? So what we're doing, what we take on in life. And so, if I had followed this, I might have became a librarian now. or somewhere in the basement where I didn't have to interact with people. because we've experienced it and because it's happened over and over and over again, we start to hold all of this stuff like it is the absolute truth. People are like that. I'm like that. This is how I need to be. This is what I need to do. And that's the truth. And nobody is going to tell me, oh no, just go over there and make friends. I'm going to be like, No, because I'm not going to put myself, in a situation like that again where I could get hurt or stung. So then that becomes the truth. And the assumptions and then the biases that are created from this narrative, it becomes our point of view. So we take on then a point of view about ourselves, about others, and about life. And either that, and then that shrinks. It starts to really shrink the possibilities around us. Okay? So I wanted to bring it forward in each piece just to give you a sense of what the narrative would sound like when it's kind of all put together. Okay? So I'm just going to erase it right now. Oh no. Okay. Oh no. When I practiced this, it came off easy peasy. Okay. So because we're human, we all have some variation, of this conversation, of this narrative that goes on. And so, and it stems back often, from childhood. Because when we're born just naturally, expressing ourselves and, thinking that and believing that people are safe, that we are good and people are good and the world is good. But then something happens that starts to change that, right? And then that starts to disconnect us. So, when we meet people in our daily lives, there's a lot more going on, than we can ever really know. It's like everybody has, a version of this showing up. So let's use this example. All right, so it's two people who are acquaintances. They've met a couple of times. There's a possibility that they could be friends. There could be a relationship there. And let's say they go shopping at, one of the big box stores. Let's say, like Walmart, all right? Or let's put myself here. So me and someone. And as I'm shopping, I'm pushing my shopping cart down the lane, and I see, this woman coming. And I know I've met her a couple times, and I know I kind of liked her. And so as we pass in the aisle, I say, hi, and then she just walks by and doesn't acknowledge me. That's the event, and that's the incompletion. And so I don't chase her down or nothing. I don't say, hey, I just kind of let her go. And then automatically, I remember all of those instances in the past where, I was ignored, or I wasn't acknowledged, or, I was rejected. So all of those incompletions from the past then come flooding back. It's like, all of a sudden, like a boomerang, my story comes forward. the already listening, the already knowing, the already doing and being. So it's like, oh, I knew. I should have known that, she was like that. Right? Oh, I should have known, why are you trying to make friends? Oh, see, I told you, and I could feel it, I could feel it in my body. And all of it then, it's like, yeah, see, I told you, I knew it. And so all of a sudden, it all comes back. And see, yep, that's it. That's the truth. I guess I didn't have to erase it all, because now I'm just putting it all back in, and it's going back on sloppier too. So, and then so everything that I've said, yes, see, that is the truth. And I'm upset about it. So then my point of view comes back, and I'm unsettled by it. I'm upset. So I go through the checkout and I'm, putting my groceries away. But meanwhile, there's this conversation that's going on in my head. And the more thoughts I'm having, the more feelings it's generating. And then the more feelings of upset I get, the more thoughts it's generating. And so I'm working myself up, into this huge upset and this huge frenzy. And then I make a decision. And my decision is, you know what? I am not going to reach out to her again. I don't need someone like that in my life. I don't need friends like that. That's it. And that becomes my decision. Okay? And so let's say it's 2 weeks later, and for 2 weeks, every time I would think about her, all of that stuff, would come back. So I try to push it aside, or I try to, distract my mind so I'm not feeling upset. And we call this model, the disconnection model, because when we're triggered into it, we're no longer connected to ourselves. We no longer wish to be connected to others. And we're certainly not connected with life. Because if you're avoiding even, thinking all of that, then you're distracted. You're not connected. And so rash decisions get made in those moments. That's it. You know what? Not even gonna be your friend anymore. And so let's say it's 2 weeks later, and I got to go back to the Walmart. And let's say she has to go back to the Walmart too that day. And so we pass each other in the aisle again. And I've been in it, for the last 2 weeks off and on, about her, making her the bad guy, because I'm right and she's wrong. I'm good and she's bad. I'm better and she's worse. And we cross each other in the aisle, and then she says, hi. And I'm like, hey, what? And I don't even acknowledge her back. And I just keep walking. And so over here, here she is, and for her, she just got ignored. And she just got totally, and I probably would have did it and just with a little bit of a twist to it, right? So for her, that's what happened. And so automatically, she starts to create, her own story. And in her story, because when that happened, she had feelings. Whatever those feelings were, whether it was confusion, or worry, or disappointment, or hurt, or, feeling rejected. And for her, that created a whole bunch of other thoughts as well. And then she starts to think about, internalize it. What did I do? What's wrong with me? And so all of a sudden, all those other past times that is reminding her of that shows up. And her already listening, is there. And so she's, the same thing that, I would have done. She's making the same thing you would do. It's like you're trying to make sense here of what happened. And so then that starts to affect, how she's being, what she's doing, what she's listening for, the conversation in her head, of what she's saying. Her body wiring kicks in. And she develops her own truth and her own point of view about me, about what happened, about herself, about life, about friendships, about all of it. And so, and in her version, she, is right too about everything that she's saying. And making me wrong. And so, if we were, if we ended up, at the same meeting table, and we need to work together now and, to come up to figure out some kind of a solution, I come in with my stuff already pre-written about her, and she comes in with her stuff already pre-written about her. And so it shows how, in a seemingly, simple event, how big, each side, each story can get. And if our kids went to the same school, let's say it's like 5 years later, our kids end up at the same school. I mean, what are the chances that, we would allow our kids to play together? Or to be friends? Or to come over? Let's say it's 20 years, and maybe they want to get married. Like the Hatfields and the McCoys. So it's like incompletions turn into stories, and stories turn into legends, and then legends turn into self-fulfilling prophecies. Now, let's say, that person was non-Indigenous. And, how my biases and how my assumptions then would be tailored to, a particular race. Or if she was a senior, how then my biases and my assumptions would be tailored towards a particular age. Or, and just like whatever it was about her that made her different. Or on the other side, and then so it all kind of, we bring it all in to prove, that we're right and they're wrong. See, what we care about as human beings, much more than anything else, is that we're right. Like, we'd rather be right than be happy a lot of times. So, when you take a look, at this model, this is actually what then starts to disconnect people from other people in their lives. So, I had said, most points of view, most stories, most narratives, they're harmless. We can easily often set them aside, like, especially if it's like, Tim Hortons and McDonald's. Like, there aren't a whole lot of people that's going to go to war, over those opposing points of view. But where it starts to, cause havoc for us is when our point of view and our truth is so absolute and it's so fueled by, emotions that it's almost impossible to distinguish ourselves, from what we believe. So that could be, an extreme example, of when two points of view clash would be, everything that's going on, right now in the United States, right? So there are people who, who like Trump. And then there are people who like Obama Biden. And on one side, they have lots of reasons, they have lots of justifications, they have lots of examples, right? Why? There's an already listening, there's an already knowing, there's an already being and doing. And their bodies, when they get into these conversations, are like, they go from 0 to 60, in a matter of seconds, right? And so it's so emotionally charged. And they believe, because of history or because of their facts or because of their own experiences even, that what they're saying is the absolute truth. And that is their point of view. And there is nothing that anybody is going to say that is going to sway them. So the same is true on the other side. And it's based in exactly the same thing, only it's flipped. There's examples, there's example after example, again, on this side, their bodies are wired, to defend. And almost even like a fight to, they would disinvite you to, Thanksgiving dinner, if they even got a whiff that, this was going to, come front and center. Because when it happens, it takes over, and it's like we're a hostage then to it. It's like our emotions, our body is so wired and so triggered, that it's unsettling. And for a lot of people, when they get triggered into, this type, of experience, it's hard to come down from that. It's hard to go back to a grounded and peaceful place. And so for the most part, people will avoid. They'll avoid the people who trigger them into that, and they'll just disconnect. They won't even engage. Like, why bother? There's no use. And that's okay if you can, disengage and not invite somebody, to Thanksgiving. But what if that's your husband? Or, that's your sister, who you love, and up until this whole, different points of view, it was a wonderful relationship, and so what ends up happening is one side, and they both do, it's like they dehumanize and they monstricize, both sides. And that's what we've seen, here in Canada, around residential school. Around, for Indigenous people, against the church. And a lot of those, a lot of those upsets, a lot of that disconnection is fueled, by strong points of view that are built on, real experiences. And so for them, that's the truth. And I'm not discounting that in any way. But if it starts to cause, if it starts to, disempower you and starts to take energy away from you and starts to limit your possibilities in your relationships and the conversations that you're willing to have and the people you're willing to talk to and the places you're willing to go, then maybe it's something, that you want to take a look at. And, so I'm using like really big extremes here, but in everybody's life, there is something like this, where we have stopped talking to people or have cut them out of our lives, because we believe, that we're right. And it's okay to, hang on to that. Like, I am in no way making, any of this wrong, because it's the most human experience ever. We bring it forward so that people can have an awareness of what is it for me that gets in the way, from the relationships, the type of relationships and the quality of relationships that I've always wanted, or that I've desperately, wanted to create. And, so, I take it from, like a small place, to a huge place. But we do that too. We can turn, what is it, a molehill? A mountain? A molehill into a mountain? But, with awareness and the tools, to be able to kind of set it aside, we can also turn a mountain into a molehill. That's the opposite. Yeah? Okay. All right. So our process, in seeds, it isn't a personal one, because we can bring these distinctions forward, using any example, whether it's being cut off in traffic or someone who likes Ford and someone likes Chevy, to show, how disempowering these elements are when they start to get momentum, in our lives. And we give people, I would say, some hope that, things don't have to remain that way. That there are tools, there are skills out there, that would allow you, to put your stuff aside and to clear some space. So when I go back and I say reconciliation is all about you, it has everything to do with you, because it's about your own peace. It's about creating peace in your own life at any moment. Whether it's, someone cuts you off in traffic and that ruins your day, because the same thing can happen, and that it does have to start with you. Because look, if I walk into, a situation, or an event of reconciliation, but I walk in with all of this front and center, it's not going to be very long, until I find somebody to, there you were. I knew there would be one of you in this room, and it wouldn't be long until I'm triggered, into my stuff. And I'm not making that wrong, because that happens actually all the time, but it's how, the process and of seeds is that it gives, the inspiration that, at any event, it kind of puts you back into the driver's seat of your life, of your reactions. Because things are always going to happen. I could walk, down the street to, and no offense to Giant Tiger or any other store, but I could walk into any store and immediately, be, followed around, by security. And, that happens. But you can create two experiences from that. So if that happens and all of a sudden it's like, boom, I'm triggered and, here I am and all this stuff again is front and centered, I'm probably not going to handle it, in the best way. And I'm probably not going to be, smiling as I'm, reacting. And then I'm gonna leave, and then I'm gonna be embarrassed. And then, my anger's gonna keep going. And then I'm gonna rail about it. And then, and then the only one who's being affected is me. Because then I carry that, with me for the rest of the day. Or however long it takes for it to subside. For myself to go back to my grounded place, and to again be at peace. So reconciliation is really about peace. Creating peace for yourself with what is, exactly the way that it is. It isn't about changing other people or changing the world, or changing society before you can be reconciled. It's about how do we interact with things and with people exactly the way they are, but that our own power remains intact. Our own power to generate peace. And okay. So, because the truth is that this stuff, okay, so let's say that's all clear. Because reconciliation, if I'm over here and I'm clear, my stuff is clear. My stuff is, neatly, tucked away. And I come up against someone, who's got their stuff blazing, the chances are that at least then, there is a space. That there is a space, for a different possibility or a different outcome than what would have been possible if I had my stuff ready to go as well. And, nobody else has any control, over me, over my reactions, over my conversation, other than me. And it's my responsibility, to keep shifting it, to keep, setting it aside. Nobody else can do that for me. And what our work does, and specifically what Seeds does, is that it shows people, in a simple, general way, that there are other choices and there are other alternatives.
So I take it then that some of the elements of tools that you referred to, once we start to become aware, story, understanding how we are, how do we then, reduce or eliminate some of the power of that story, and whether it's heavily entrenched or not. Some of that would be done in the 1 day workshop or in the 4 day or combination of?
Well, in the one day, what we do is we just bring it forward, and we just bring forward that there is a choice.
Right.
So, I guess this is how I would answer it. Reconciliation, like anything else worth doing, does require, time, right? It does require a time commitment. We just share the details. It's not like you could drive through McDonald's and ask for a Happy Meal. It doesn't. Or else you go to the gym, one day and work out real hard. And it's like, okay, that's it. I'm done now. I don't got to go back again. And so what we share in Seeds is that, this is like, these are tools for lifelong, right? And so the time is required to put in, but it's just enough that it's just enough of an introduction that, it piques people's curiosity, and they're yearning, actually, too.
Right. And so, from experience last year, just in a small capsule that you provided us, I could say that it helped my spouse, my wife, and I, because we just started focusing on a story. What's a story? And so the next day, I'm started to ramble on about something, and my wife turns to me, she says, "Are you in your story?" And then that shocked me, right? So then I had to reflect on it, and I had a choice to make. And then I said, yeah, I'm in my story. So it kind of set a lot of things in motion. So thanks very much for that. And obviously, I think it stimulates. I have a number of questions already from a few people who were here about further questions. So opportunities to do this within Seeds will be there in 2020. There's some plan around that, so we'll be letting you know more about that. And obviously, feel free to look at the Returning to Spirit website.
There's an upside to it. Because, we had some Seeds that were scheduled in October and in November, and then they got postponed. And so, I'm trying to always look for the upside of COVID. And so, maybe people are going to be isolated together, for a couple more months. And maybe the need for reconciliation will, pop up all around us. I'm just kidding.
No, actually, I actually think that could possibly happen because there's a lot of stress around us during COVID. And so if we're able to express that in different ways than just anger and just keep doing this and start to talk about it, that's a very good point. So with that, we'll take a little break to 4:30 and pause, let everybody get up, walk around, get some water, go to the washroom, and we'll be back at 4:30 with the second session.